I'm joined now by Dr. Adam Hamawy. He is a doctor and former U.S. Army combat surgeon, but he also worked as a volunteer at that hospital in Gaza where this deadly strike took place. Welcome in, doctor. It is good to have you. You knew several of the people who were killed in this attack. What can you tell us about them? And also, what can you tell us about some of the work that was being done at this hospital, not just yesterday, but also when you were there?
Thank you very much for having me. Yes, this is, personal because not only did I stay and work there for 2 weeks earlier this year, but I knew a couple of the journalists that were killed. I met them actually last year when I was there the first time. And, this is just, it's consistent with the systematic attacks that have been on the hospitals and the healthcare workers and the journalists since the last, since this all began 2 years ago. It's just continues to happen, and this is just the latest example.
Now, doctor, the Israeli military has said that they were targeting a camera that they say was either on or in or nearby that hospital that was feeding images of Israeli troops. Now, that explanation doesn't necessarily explain why there were two strikes, one initial strike and then a subsequent strike that killed those journalists and aid workers who then rushed to the scene after the first strike. But what is your reaction when you hear that from the IDF?
I mean, it's just the same thing over and over again. They're just coming up with excuses. These are journalists. It's well known. They're very clear about who they are. They wear press badges. They, a strike did happen, and they came to cover what was the injured, like is expected, and what's been happening since the beginning of the war. So this seems like it was planned. After the first strike, they found the journalists who were carrying cameras because that's what they do, and then they struck them. And this is not the first instance where this happens. I mean, to strike someone with like a Hamas camera, I mean, that's just silly. These are targeted. 240 journalists have been killed over the last 2 years. That's more than ever been documented. And they're not all, terrorists as they claim to be. This is why we're asking for independent observers, because Israel keeps claiming, these silly claims, and we keep saying that this is not happening. The humanitarians that have been there, the doctors and the nurses that have been there, the journalists that are documenting all say otherwise. So it's really their excuse again for violating international law and continuing this genocide.
Now, you were inside, again, that hospital. The Israeli government has said over the course of this conflict, and the U.S. government has said this as well, that their intelligence is that in the cases of some, and in some cases a lot of these hospitals that are hit with strikes, there are Hamas combatants using them as cover, essentially using the civilians there as human shields, is what some IDF officials have said. Is that true to your experience there? Were there Hamas combatants in those hospitals at the time you were there?
So my personal experience, the experience of hundreds of other doctors and healthcare workers and nurses who have been there over the last 2 years, the experience of the humanitarian workers, and really all the NGOs say otherwise. So until they bring, another third-party observer in there, their intelligence is just wrong. And even if there were injured combatants, which, if that happens, it's still against international law to hit the hospital for that case. In terms of operations and people, actually fighters that are actively in, that has not been observed by anyone that's been in these hospitals over the last 2 years.
Dr. Adam Hamawy, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.